Hey everyone, I am your astrologer Wonder Girl, helping you to live in tune with the natural cycles of the moon. This is your astrology horoscope for the new moon in Virgo, which happens on Monday, September 6, 2021 at 8:51 p.m. Eastern Time or 5:51 p.m. Pacific Time. Now, what I think is going on at this new moon is that we are really trying to do things in life in a new and different way. And in a new and different way that's easier, that's happier, that's more fun, that's simpler, that's more playful and more relaxing. But I think we're actually having a lot of difficulty doing that at this time. I think we're having a lot of difficulty doing that because I think we have a lot of fears and insecurities around that and a lot of old habits stuck in very old ways that are dying very hard now, that are bringing a lot of challenges here, very difficult new moon that we're going to have to do our best to work around. So that's something to talk about in this video. If you want to hear more about that, please stay tuned because I'm going to hop into it right now. In order to get into it though, you know me, what I always like to do first is place it on the chart so that you can see what it is that I'm referring to in this video and so that you can follow along with me. So I'm going to do that now. Here's the new moon in this chart. I know that it's a new moon because we have the sun and the moon here at the same degree in the same sign. What are new moons all about? New moons are all about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts. What is Virgo? Well, Virgo is a Mercury ruled sign, so it is a lot about like our thought process in a lot of ways. But it's also an earth sign as well, which does have to do with doing things on the day-to-day, our habits, our routines, and our health as well. And our job falls into this. So what that means to me so far, I guess just to bring it all together, is that what is going on in a very broad sense at this new moon in Virgo is that we are doing our best here to step into a new job, a new set of daily routines, new habits in some way, new health situations, and even new and better perspectives on ourselves and our lives as we move forward, and to get some fresh energy there as we move forward. Okay. And that to me is it. But before I move forward and explain more about this new moon and this theme in particular and more of the specifics surrounding it, you know me, I always do like to go backwards in time before going forward in order to give you more of the context of this new moon and of how we got here and of why it's important to us. Now, normally I will, or have in the past, I suppose, gone back to December of last year and given you the breakdown, but I'm actually going to cut it just a little bit short this time. And I'm going to start, instead of back in December, I'm going to start here in June of this year, 2021, at the last solar eclipse, which was in Gemini. I want to start there because solar eclipses are big deals that do determine, I guess, big themes that we're going to be working through for the 6 months after they happen and for many times, many months and years after that. So I'm going to start there. What was that new moon solar eclipse in Gemini about in June of this year? In my opinion, it was about us taking some new chapter in life that's better, that we've been trying to get to for quite some time, and settle into it, Gemini, and make it more familiar in some way, shape, or form, okay? And I believe that around June, we were able to do that, settle into some new and better chapter in life that had been trying to arrive for a while. Because we did that, then in July now, at the new moon after that, the middle of July, the new moon in Cancer right around here, we then tried to take this new life that we were getting more familiar with and ground it and root it and give it a more firm foundation now from which to grow and last the test of time, of which I also believe that we were able to accomplish. Okay, because of that, then in August, here the month later, at that new moon in Leo, right about here, we then tried to figure out now how to make this new chapter in life that we were settling into and grounding and rooting more happy and more joyful and more fun, and how we could really do things that we love in this new chapter in life and believe that we are worthy of happiness and could create it. And I do believe that in August, especially around that last full moon that we had 2 weeks ago, right about here in Aquarius, we were able to do that. We came up with, I should say, some big ideas about our future and about things we would ultimately like to pursue in life that it is that we really, really love. And because over the course of the past few months, we've grounded a new life and settled into it more or less, and started to believe more that we're worthy of happiness and get big ideas about what we could do that we actually love. Now, this month, this new moon, of which this video is for, we are actually trying to do these happy things and to enjoy life and to do more of that on the day-to-day, having happier habits and better routines and a better thought process that is going to facilitate more of this joy and this new space in life that has now arrived. Okay, and that's it. All that I want to say. right? Because that's it, I'm now just going to repeat that one more time because I do like to do that before we move on into more of the specifics. So let me do that now. What I think this new moon is really all about is about us trying to do things on the day-to-day habitually that we really love and that we really enjoy here now that we are starting to arrive in some new and better chapter in life and ground it and make it more familiar. Okay. So that's it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the more specific details about this new moon itself. And to go into the details, I'm going to talk about each of the specific astrological aspects here that the new moon is going to be making, and the ones that are going to be around it. And I'm going to start, I suppose, to me, with what appears to be the biggest and most important one, which is going to be, here's the new moon. Maybe I should do that. Here's the new moon. This new moon is opposite Neptune in Pisces. What is this about? Well, I'm going to interpret this positively at first because I do think that there's one more thing I need to say to set up this new moon before I really hit the other points hard. And that's this. Neptune is, when it goes well, it's a planet of ease. It's a planet of rest. It's a planet of relaxation, especially in its home sign of Pisces, and one too that is about ease and adaptability, with Pisces also being a mutable sign. So what this means to me is that not only is this new moon about us doing things on the day-to-day that are happy and that we actually want to be doing now that we're in a new and better chapter in life and starting to see it more grounded and rooted, but it's also about us doing these happier things in a more restful, relaxing, peaceful, go with the flow kind of way with less stress weighing on us here as we move forward. Okay, and also I should note Neptune is about compassion, with more kindness and compassion towards ourselves, especially, and possibly other people. Okay, but even though that is totally a thing that I think is going on here and what this new moon is about, I should note that oppositions are a challenge, which is what this is, and that Neptune can also be a challenge as well because it does function on an octave that's very different from our conscious mind. So even though I do believe that that is the point of this new moon in Virgo, I should note this can be a source of confusion. Neptune, a lot of confusion that can come up at this time. Not only can this create confusion, but it can also create exhaustion with the Neptune influence, and it can also create some kind of sadness, if you will, some weird emotional responses with the Neptune and a water sign here that can also be very, very difficult. Anything else? Confusion, sadness. I say sadness, weird emotions, exhaustion. Now, why are we feeling so confused and sad and exhausted about doing things we love to do in an easier way? Like, why is it so hard? I think the reason why we're feeling confused, I should note, does have to do with quite a few things, but one of the things I believe is Mars. Okay, because Mars is fairly close, not entirely close, but is fairly close to this new moon, about 10 degrees away. What is this about to me? Well, Mars is in Virgo, and Virgo is about habits. Sure, a new one that we're trying to step into, but also about old ones we're trying to outgrow, old habits. So one of the issues here that I think is the problem is that we're trying to step into a new way of life that's fun, easier, more relaxing, less stressful, but we got some old habits that are still around. What are the old habits that are still around? Well, they're about stress. We have old stressful habits that are around, especially because the ancient astrologers, not me, but the ancient astrologers didn't think so kindly of Virgo, having to do with a lot of imbalances of power and servitude and all of that. So I think that's it. It's hard for us to step into a new, easier, more fun way of life because we got a lot of old habits that are based on old stressful ways of acting and old stressful ways of doing things. What are the old stressful ways of doing things? Well, Virgo can be a very perfectionistic sign. It likes things to be perfect. It likes things to be done a certain way. It likes things to be done just right. Not only that, but Virgo can be a tad bit critical because it likes things done a certain way. Also, too, Virgo likes everything in its box, organized and where it needs to be. And so I think it's really hard for us to step into this like flowy, easier, happier way of life. Sure, because we got old habits that are stuck on routine and stuck on stress and on things being perfect and on things being a certain way, and that are really hard on ourselves. We're being really critical of what we are and are not doing here. That I think yeah, is definitely a bit of a challenge. Not only is Virgo where Mars is about old habits, but it's also old mindsets too. Not only are we still having old habits we got to get rid of, but we've got old mindsets that are enabling the old habits as well, that I think too is quite hard. Not only is there that, but Virgo to me has to do with guilt and shame. Maybe Saturn and Capricorn have to do with guilt and shame, but I think Virgo to me is one of the signs that definitely brings a lot of that. So not only here are we trying to step into a new, fun, easier way of life, and it's hard for us to do it because we have some old habits and old mindsets stuck in a stressful, perfectionistic, critical way of going about life, but also because there's a lot of guilt and shame if we were to do things in this easier way. There's a lot of guilt and shame of, oh, I'm not doing enough, oh, I'm making things too easy for myself, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. There's a lot of guilt and shame and a lot of expectation, perhaps too, about what we should be doing that's not helpful for the situation, that I think, to be honest, we're putting a lot on ourselves. Okay, so that to me is a big deal that's going on, which again is bringing the confusion and wearing us out and making us tired. Tired because we have all these thoughts that are unhelpful and all these things that we're doing that are not conducive to what we're meant to be working towards at this time. Okay. Not only is that difficult, but there's another difficult alignment going on here as well, and that's Venus in Libra, making a square over here to Pluto in Capricorn. This is difficult because it's a square, which is a hard alignment, and because it's Pluto, which does tend to create challenges most of the time. So it's very hard. What is the challenge here? Well, Venus is the feminine principle, the feminine planet, if you will, and it does have to do with receptivity, receiving things. And with Pluto here and with it being a square, I think we're challenged when it comes to receiving. We're afraid. We're afraid to let our guard down. We're afraid to surrender. We're afraid to stop controlling things and stop forcing things and stop stressing out about things and to just let things be, right? The masculine does, the feminine is. We're afraid to just be and to just let things be what they are, and to allow things to come to us and to happen on their own time here. So I think that's another part of the challenge here. Not only is that an issue, but Venus is not only just the feminine principle, but also does have to do with money and relationships and with our value systems and with our own sense of self. So not only are we having difficulty receiving ease, receiving good time, being open to let things come to us and happen on their own time, but I think we're afraid of the huge Pluto change, Pluto permanent change, Pluto that this new way of behaving that's easier and more receptive is going to require. Because us to act in this different way is going to require us to drastically change Venus, our value systems, to value ease, to value time to rest, to value the seasons and the cycles of life. And I think that's hard. Not only is us settling into this new way of being going to require us to drastically change our value systems, but it's going to require us to drastically change our attitudes about money, how we make money, how hard we work for money, and what ways we work for money. It's going to require us to change that. Because when you do things in an easier way without stressing, right, then there's a lot of questions about, well, how do I make money if I'm not doing all this stuff? It's going to require us to change our attitudes about money. And it's also going to require us to change our attitudes about relationships and how we work with relationships, the people themselves, to move forward, where we may have to get rid of people who are too stressful for us, especially if they're creating some of the guilt and the shame, and where we're going to have to learn how to cultivate different kind of relationships with people who put us more at ease. So I think there's a lot of that going on here, a lot of things already so far. Maybe just to repeat that, because I'm going to add one more on it. We're trying to step into a new way of doing things in life that's easier, that's playful, that's more fun, that's more flexible, but we're having difficulty doing it because a lot of old habits and a lot of old perspectives that are stuck on serious, tough, perfectionistic and critical times that are bringing a lot of guilt and shame. Not only that, but we're also having a difficulty stepping into new and better times here because we're afraid to receive and to let ourselves surrender to what is to come and to be open to different things. And because we're afraid of the huge, massive change in almost all areas of our lives and our perspectives that it's going to require in order to get there. This is hard. Okay. Very hard. Not only is that the issue, now I'm going to add one more on at this time period, but we've also got Mercury right before this new moon entering pre-retrograde shadow. So it's in pre-retrograde shadow at the time of this, making an opposition here to Chiron and Aries. This is hard because the pre-retrograde shadow, which is difficult, the opposition here, and because it's Chiron, which is always causing problems. All right, what is the challenge here? Well, Libra, where Mercury is, wants balance. It wants things to be, and I don't know if order is the word to me. Order is more of like a Virgo word, but it wants things to be like easier to handle, if you will, easier to get a control and easier to manage in some way. And it also wants peaceful relationships, Libra, and making these massive shifts to do things in an easier way and to adjust our mindset, our habits, our relationships, our money in order to get there is not balanced. You know, having massive shifts to do things in a different way is the opposite of balance, is the opposite of that. And it's the opposite of people pleasing. It's the opposite of people pleasing because we have to make changes with people in order to move forward. And so I think there's also a massive fear and worry and insecurity about that as well. If I do things in this new and different way, then like, what if I upset somebody? What if I make someone sad? And like, what if my life is in chaos and in disarray? And because there's a lot of worries and fears here, I think with Chiron and Aries, you know, we're kind of hesitating because Aries is a Mars ruled sign. We're hesitating to do things. Mars being the planet of action, we're hesitating to do things, or if we are doing things, we're doing the wrong things, or we're only doing a little bit and stuff that doesn't really resonate with our soul and with who we're becoming and with what is next. That I think is bringing a lot of like intense, unpleasant, very unpleasant emotions here, a lot of pressure. And also I should note with the Mars influence, a lot of anger. You know, the Mars influence is bringing anger at ourselves, I believe, because we have these issues that we can't break through. Because we know what we want to do deep in our soul, but we have these issues and these habits and these mindsets and these fears that we can't break through, and possibly even anger at other people that we're projecting on, that we perceive to be blockages, when really the blockage is internal, you know. Other people aren't the problem. You can tell other people off if you want to. I think it's just fear about us doing these things. So I think there's a lot of anger that's going on here as well. That's a challenge. And I think what really needs to happen, now I'm going to go into the good alignments because there are some. I think what really needs to happen here is that we need to take a step back from all these negative emotions. And I think we need to get a unique perspective on what's going on. And I think we need to get more of a long-term perspective on what's happening, if you will, that sees beyond the present moment and beyond some of these things. That's because while this is going on, we do have Mercury here in Libra making a grand air trine, which includes a trine here to the North Node in Gemini and a trine over here to the to Saturn in Aquarius, which are making a trine to each other, Saturn and the North Node. And what are air trines about? Well, air trines, right, are about, maybe to put it this way, it's about planets and all the air signs connecting with each other. And air is what? Flowy. It gets things flowing, you know, like air is flowy. Not only is air flowy, but it doesn't take things so seriously, right? It kind of gets things going in a different way, especially with Saturn being in Aquarius and Aquarius being about unique perspectives. So what I think really needs to happen at this new moon is that we need to kind of separate from all these like negative emotions and fears, and we need to loosen up a bit and kind of shift the energy and shift focus and get a unique perspective here, a different way of looking at things that's more long-term, Aquarius, and more future-oriented. And if we can do that, I do think there is a little bit of hope here to salvage this new moon in Virgo, and that's because of other alignments. Around this time, Venus in Libra is going to make a trine over here to Jupiter in Aquarius. What is this about? Well, Jupiter to me is about wisdom. It's about understanding. It is about new perspectives and new approaches. So again, if we can get out of our emotions for a little bit and shift the energy, whatever that is, you know, and to kind of loosen things up and stop with the stress and to see things differently and to think more long term and to see the bigger picture, I think we start to get a new perspective on our life and on what we're worthy of receiving, Venus, and how we can receive more, and about how we need to rearrange our relationships and our money and our resources in new and different and better ways. I think we get a lot of insights around that it is that we need, in a more optimistic way of looking at it. Not only do we get that, but the new moon is in a trine to Uranus, which is the most exact alignment as well. We also get an unexpected Uranus, a sudden or an unexpected excuse me, insight or motivation. I think this is motivation. Sudden and unexpected boost of motivation and inspiration now that we've got some understanding here about how to more fully do things in a new and different way, and at least start to get the ball rolling in the ways that it is that we need to move forward. Okay, and I think that is it. Yeah, that's all that I want to mention in terms of the aspects there, because that's it. I'm now just going to repeat all of that one more time without the astrological jargon to give you a better sense of what I think is going on here before I move on to some other points and notes. So let me do that now. What do I think is going on at this new moon in Virgo? I think we're trying to step into a new way of behaving in life and acting in life, and new habits where we do more things that are fun for us, that we actually want to be doing in a lighter and more playful and more easy and more restful and relaxing and flexible way. But I think we're having a lot of difficulty doing that because I think we're stuck in old habits that are hard, that are tough, that are critical, and old mindsets that are bringing us a lot of guilt and shame for doing things in a new and different way. Not only do I think this is hard because we're stuck in old habits and mindsets that are very critical, but I think it's hard too because we're afraid to receive, to be open to receive different possibilities and different experiences and to surrender to it. And because we're afraid to make some of the big changes all across the board in our life that are going to allow the receiving to happen easier. Not only is it hard for us to step into this different way because of all of that, but it's also hard to step into this different and easier way because we're worried about all these changes that we need to make in order to receive more ease, throwing a lot of our life and our relationships into chaos and into disarray and having everything be up in the air. Because there's so many fears about this new way, I think we're then hesitating to act in a new way or not doing anything at all, which is bringing a lot of anger and a lot of frustration and just like tons of unpleasant emotions. Because there's a lot of unpleasant emotions here, what I think we need to do is take a step back from our feelings and just do something to like shift our focus and shift our energy and get us like out of the feelings and out of the head and into some kind of unique perspective with a bit more of a bigger picture view. And I think us getting out of the negativity and shaking things up and getting a different perspective then gives us a new understanding of our situation, of what we need to do, of how we need to approach things, of how we need to adjust our relationships, our money, our value systems, and our sense of self for the better. That gives us some unexpected inspiration here and motivation to at least start some things in motion in a new way that's going to be much better for us as we move forward. So that is it. Anything else though I want to say here? Do I want to say something about the relationships? Yeah, maybe I should just linger on the relationships because I didn't feel like I was super clear maybe before about that. There could definitely be some conflicts with relationships at this time. I do mean arguments. I do mean a lot of arguments here. That's because Venus is a planet of relationships. It is square Pluto, which is hard. We've got the new moon fairly kind of conjunct Mars, also a bit difficult. So there can be some arguments with relationships at this time. What are the arguments about? I think it's about you wanting to do things in a different way, in an easier way. And I think it might be hard to shift your relationships for that. Maybe some of your relationships don't know what your new way is because you're hesitating, or maybe some of your relationships don't want to adjust. And I just want to emphasize, I think that sometimes conflict is necessary. I think that some of you may need to have these conflicts with other people in order to make these adjustments that it is that you need and move forward. So I just wanted to linger on that a little bit. Some of these conflicts or confrontations, right, could be with personal relationships, you telling a partner like, hey, I want to mix up my routines. What do you think? You know, I want to spend a little less time with you, or I want to spend time with you here because I'm doing, which could be hard. And some of it could be professional, talking to a boss or a coworker as well. But again, Just because they're hard doesn't mean you should avoid them. I think there needs to be some kind of rearranging of a relationship, whether they like it or not, or you like it or not, in order to do things a bit differently by the end of this to move onwards. Okay, so I wanted to say that. A few other notes. I did want to make a few other notes too, and go into larger themes, because I do like to do that. However, I should note what I'm about to say to better describe this. This time period is a bit different than what I normally would go into, and it does feel a little bit out of my comfort zone to talk about some of these things, but it's what I just feel compelled to say at this time. I hate it when this happens. I hate it when like I get some of these like weird messages from spirit about what to say. Normally, I try to avoid talking about these kind of things and give myself some time before filming to process, but I just feel like I need to start here. So. And say these things. I got to free the Gemini. I've got tons of planets in Gemini, so we're just going to go for it. What I think, to use a metaphor, that's what I'm going to do. Metaphor, bigger picture. What I think is happening at this new moon is that we are really learning a different way of doing things in life and going about life that's easier, that's fun, that's more flexible. And that to me is a more feminine way of going about life. We're learning at this new moon a more feminine way of going about life. Why would I say that? Okay, that's because the new moon is in Virgo, which to me is a feminine sign. The earth and the water signs are feminine, in my opinion. The fire signs and the air signs are masculine. So we've got a new moon here in Virgo, a feminine sign, opposite Neptune in Pisces, a feminine sign. Not only that, but we've got the opposite point of Pluto, which is important to me in evolutionary astrology, which is what I practice here. That's in Cancer, which is very feminine and which is a long trend that we're going to be experiencing over the course of the next 35 years, because the Saturn and Pluto conjunction did happen with that opposite point of Pluto and Cancer. So, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. It's very good. We're going into that time of life. So what I think is going on, right, is that that's really what this new moon is about. However, doing things in a feminine way of life is fundamentally different than the way that I think we're used to doing things and the way that we have done things for many years and decades prior to this point. I think for many years and decades prior to this point, we've been doing things in a masculine kind of way. It doesn't mean that the masculine way is bad. I do want to explain a little bit more about that as I move forward a little bit later. It doesn't mean that the masculine way is bad. I think it just means that the masculine way is like what has predominated over the course of a long time. Okay. And I think because the masculine way has predominated and the feminine way has not really been a thing, the shift is a hard stop. It's very difficult to make, because I do think that the energies function very, very differently. And I suppose in order to kind of explain the differences, I'm going to draw some things here on the chart in terms of the hormones between men and women, right? I understand that masculine and feminine to me goes beyond bodies and is more of a soul thing, but I think talking about the physical hormones can help shed light on how the energies are meant to function. So I wanted to do that. Okay, I want to start by drawing the way a male's hormones looks like over the course of a day and over the course of a month. Okay, and when it comes to a man's hormones, they do function more in a straight line, right? Like this is the way a man's hormones functions every day. It's just a straight line. Sometimes it will fluctuate a little bit. There will be little ups and downs over the course of a day and the month, but they're relatively kind of small. Now, when it comes to a woman's hormones and the way that a woman functions, her body functions over the course of a month, it's much different than that. A woman has a more, what do you want to call it? A rocky, a rolly, a bumpy hormonal trajectory. A woman's hormones look more like this. Okay. And what you get here, something like this, okay, is that you'll get a woman's period right about here when the hormones are very low, so to speak. This is the beginning of her cycle, which is interestingly about 28, 29 days, which is how long the lunar month is, okay? And then this is the end of her cycle, like when her period happens again, okay? And then up here is when the hormones are very high. This is when a woman ovulates, which is like the time she's most likely to get pregnant, okay? Hormones are high. This is her period. I should also note as well that when a woman gets her period, clearly the hormones are low and her energy is very low because their hormones are dropping. And when She ovulates, which is the time she's most likely to get pregnant when her hormones are high, is a time that's very high energy, very active, has more energy to do things and to get things done. And so, so I think that there's a lot of that's going on here. And I draw these to explain, I think we're going from a more masculine way of doing things in life, which is what? A straight line focus. To me, the straight focused, directed, goal-oriented in a lot of ways, can do the same thing for long periods of time, to a feminine way of going about life, which has high highs and low lows, and which is kind of wavy, right? You got to ride the wave here. And I think it's really hard for us to make that adjustment to go from focus, clear, directed, goal-oriented to high highs, low lows, going with the flow, riding the wave on the energy as we move forward. And I think that's where the struggle is. If we wanted to put this in common terms, perhaps maybe to give you like a common way of thinking, I don't know if common's the word, but a way of thinking about this in the real world, I think what this is leading towards is different ways of work, right? Because the new moon is in Virgo, and Virgo is technically about our job. It rules our job, okay? And so another way to think of this is that what we're learning as a metaphor, or in society, if you will, is to have more of our jobs, right, that honor more of a feminine way of life, and to have more of our jobs that honor a feminine way of life by what? Allowing work from home options, allowing maternity leave and paternity leave, or allowing a non-traditional work day where the work day isn't always 9 to 5, but can span different hours and different days and things like that. And I think that's what is going on here at this time, in our lives in general. We're trying to adopt a more feminine way, a flowy way of going about life, where some days we're high, ready to act, ready to go, and some days we're not ready to do anything. We don't really want to do anything, and we need to rest and relax and heal and recuperate. I think we're really trying to adjust to that in our personal lives. And I think in a professional way, we're also trying to adjust to that as well, offering more feminine ways of working in the workplace and in the world to honor more of that as well. Because if we want to look at this, the 9 to 5 to me was built for a man. Like, that's why I don't work for a company. That's why I own my own business. 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, is built for a man or a masculine sexual essence, because I think the masculine can sustain that. The hormones are a flat line, can do the same thing day in and day out at the same pace, at the same rate to hit these goals, as to where the feminine, one day, the feminine is high energy, high functioning, high focused, high performing. The next day, the feminine energy, or a few days later, is needs more time and needs more space to rest and relax and to do easier tasks. So to have a feminine essence that functions more flowy, do the same thing every single day, day in and day out at the same times with the same performance goals, to me just is not the way it's meant to be. It's not the way that the feminine essence functions, So I think we're having to change. I think that's a big theme that's starting to go on. Really, that's been going on for some time, but that's getting an extra boost here at this new moon. It's not only for us to be more flowy and go with the flow in our lives and more restful and relaxing, but to also adopt that at work through a variety of different ways, with the hours of the day that we work, and with the paid leave and all that other stuff that's going on. And I should note too, I think it's more than that as well that needs to occur. I think it's more about the roles in the workplace, if we want to talk about that too, because I think still that there's a lot of jobs in the workplace today that are men's roles with women's bodies in it, right? There are a lot of, just because there are more women in the workplace, it doesn't mean that they're doing feminine jobs. They're doing man's jobs. They're just a female body in it. So I think that there's a lot more than that I think is trying to happen right now. But again, you need to remember, it's hard. This is a very difficult new moon in Virgo. So it's not just like, I'll just adopt a more feminine way of being and done, we've got this. And we'll just change our work hours and change our roles to do more work from home options and done. No, there's a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of resistance resistance in our own soul to doing an easier way of life, and resistance in society and in culture to adopting more of this flowing high, low, lows, up and down, do what you want, you know, kind of, and I don't know, do what you want, but there's obstacles. There's a lot of obstacles and a lot of resistance to that I think is the issue, you know, because we've done things in one way for so long. And not only is there resistance to this because we've done things one way for so long, which is definitely a big part of this new moon, but because this is scary, you know, this is scary to be a free-for-all, you know, like with the women's hormones, it's like every day is different, and things are up and things are down. I mean, it's scary in order to release the focus and release the direction and allow more of this lack of routine, lack of a schedule, if you will, or a different type of routine and schedule to come into place here. Not only is it difficult because of that, but because balance is also very hard. You know, that was also another theme of this new moon, is we're worried about finding balance. And when you think of a woman's hormones, like, what is balance? I mean, to me, balance is more, one of the ways of thinking of balance is like the scales, and on each side of the scale you have something equal, right? But a woman's hormones, it's not equal. You know, you get one bump here, and then the next bump is very high, and then the next one's kind of, you know, middling in between the two. You can't just cut a woman's hormones in half and then get one side looks exactly like the other. They're out of balance. Even the moon phase, you know, I do all my videos for astrology by the moon phase. The moon phase is not consistent. I mean, it is kind of. It takes about, 29 and a half days to circle, but it's 29 and a half days. It's not consistent. You know, the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. How do you explain that to someone? When is 2.5 days? You know, it's like these things aren't equal, aren't balanced. So I think that there's also a lot of challenges here too, is like, not only is it hard to learn a different way of doing things when you've been doing things the other way for so long, and not only is it hard to do things in a new way that is very unstructured, like, and that's very all over the place, if you will, but it's also difficult too because balance doesn't exist, you know? What is balance in this new paradigm as well? You know, like when I think about balancing my hormones, right, being a woman, it's not balance my hormones so that they're the same all the time, so that they become flatline, so that they become, no, balancing my hormones means going more with the rhythm, you know, making the good days better, and making, you know, and trying to be okay with the flow, right? And to do certain things at different times that support different types of functions. So I think that that's also, you know, a thing that's going on here, is that it's very hard to do that. Now I should note, women nowadays try to regulate their cycles by not having a period or by taking birth control, but birth control, in my opinion, is a man's way. It's a man's way of dealing with the female problem. Just control it. Just make it not happen, and just control it, you know? Because the birth control, maybe to draw a third chart, birth control doesn't basically, it takes the cycle of a woman's hormones and it makes it like this. It makes it flatline. You know, here's your period down here, and then this is the rest of it, which looks more like a man's hormone, kind of like a woman's, but more like a man's than it does like, you know. So I think that this is where a lot of the struggles are coming in at this new moon. Personally, is how do we go with the flow and work with the highs and work with the lows in their own unique way that they need to be worked with, and stop trying to control and force things, and how do we learn and get with it, and not be so afraid of it, because, yeah, I mean, it has its own nuances there. I think that's the big issue, but it's also what we're learning too in society and in the world as well. Okay. So I think that's a big thing. But even though that is the thing, and all of that is important, there's a little bit more nuance that I want to add to this as well, that is going to get a good bit more complex. And this is like a whole other tangent. I don't know why I'm going on this long tangent, but I just felt like it. Even saying what I just said, even though what I just said is true, is still not the whole story, right? Because we are at this time, right? We are at this time in the astrology learning a more of a feminine way of existing and going about life, not only now, but I really do truly think for many years and decades to come. But even though now we're learning a more feminine way of going about life, there are people who exist who are not feminine, who have more of a masculine way. And we do need both the feminine and both the masculine to coexist together, or else humanity would stop existing, right? Because we wouldn't be able to create more of ourselves. So even though I say this time, we are heading into more of a feminine, flowy time of way of working in our lives and professionally. It's not enough, I think, to just leave it there, because masculine souls, energies, and masculine people still do exist and are needed in that energy. So I think what I want to do is take this a step further now to explain what more this shift might look like in more real terms, in more real terms. So let me do that now. I think the first thing I want to say is that in order for us to move more towards a feminine time, that both the masculine and the feminine energies do need to adjust in their own ways. So I'll start there. Maybe I'll take the feminine energy first, and note that feminine energy can be a person who has a feminine body. It can be a feminine soul, or it can be the part of yourself that's feminine. Okay. And what I think is going on is that in order for this to happen, right, in order for us as individuals and as a society to shift more towards a feminine way of life that's healthy, what I think needs to happen is that a lot of the feminine people, souls and energies needs to be more okay with being feminine and let more and more and more and more of that happen and ease more and more and more into that. Okay. That's because we've got Venus here in Libra at the time of this new moon, making a square to Pluto in Capricorn. All right. And Venus is a feminine planet, and Libra, in my opinion, is a masculine sign, again, being an air sign. And Pluto is not pleasant. So what this indicates to me is that over the course of the past few years and decades, feminine people, feminine souls, feminine energies, regardless of your body, have been pressured to be more masculine, to be more in a masculine mode of working, right? Feminine souls have to do the 9 to 5 with these outrageous performance goals and these like super structured jobs. So I think in order to affect this change that I speak of, the feminine energies are going to need to relax more into their femininity and to accept more of that, and to remove some of the masculine armor and to let more of it show in some way, shape, or form here. There's going to be a need to do more of that. Which could be women leaving the workplace, or could be women, creating their own companies and their own routines. The feminine souls, could be something like that, and becoming to more of an acceptance and love for who they are. Okay. Not only do I believe that the feminine needs to loosen, like to let go of some of the masculine ways of doing things, especially from being conditioned by culture to be more masculine, but I also think that the masculine energies, now to go to the opposite, needs to what? This is where it gets more complicated. The masculine energies, I think, needs to do this, because we've got Mars as the masculine planet, and it's in Virgo, a feminine sign. I think the masculine energies need to be less feminine, right? Mars, masculine and feminine sign. The masculine energies need to learn to be less feminine and to say, look, I don't, especially if you lean towards that, if you lean more masculine, needs to say, look, I don't want to do things in a feminine way per se, because that's not the way I lean. That doesn't feel authentic to me, but I will hold space for the feminine energies to do their thing, and will appreciate and respect that, and will try to provide structure and support where need be, right? The masculine energies, I think, needs to say that I don't want to be you, but I am going to provide and do whatever I can in my own way to support that. Not only do I think the masculine needs to be more okay, honoring more of that, but if the masculine isn't ready for that, I think there's also a little bit of a need here for the masculine to say, if there's not a chance to offer the structure, to kind of take a back seat and to say, if I can't honor and respect you, then I'm just gonna chill out for a little minute and do my own thing until I catch up, you know, until I figure things out here. That I think is also needed a tad bit here, because I do think that these two energies have gotten a little bit out of alignment here. The feminine has started to adapt a very masculine approach to life, because that's what society has been and required. And the masculine has adopted more of a feminine approach to life, like as more like feminine people and women take place in the workforce and things change. And I think not only is this new moon about recalibrating to honoring more of a feminine approach, but not towards making everyone feminine, but towards like recalibrating the way that the masculine and feminine interact to be something even healthier and to be something even better. I think that's the long and short of it that I'm trying to get to here as well. Okay, but do I think that this is going to happen, you know, all at once? I don't think it's going to happen all at once, because Mars and Venus, which are the masculine and feminine principles, are still not connecting, right? They're still not in the same sign. They're still not making aspects to each other here. So I don't think that, even though I think we are in a process now of recalibrating the masculine and the feminine to learn different ways of supporting each other that's more healthier and more in its power, I don't think that that's actually fully going to occur, I should note, until Mars and Venus come conjunct, and start a new cycle. When planets come conjunct, they start new cycles with each other, which will not be until February of next year, you know, in Capricorn, which is also kind of a feminine sign. So, and that's going to be after Venus goes retrograde in this December. So even though now, I guess to continue bring it together, I think we are stepping into more of a feminine way of life. Not that the masculine has to be feminine, just that it has to honor and provide space and respect for that. And I don't think that the two are going to fully jive until at the very earliest now, next February, when the two meet here in Capricorn. And the interesting thing about February, when the two meet in Capricorn, is that, right, that's going to be after Venus goes retrograde in December. And if you remember this time last year, it was about this time last year, Mars went retrograde in Aries, right? So this time last year, right around this Virgo new moon, last year, Mars, the masculine planet, went retrograde in Aries, a really masculine sign, saying, hey, I got to learn a different way of doing things here. Times are a-changing. I got to learn a different way of doing things. Mars has not, I don't think, caught up to Venus since that retrograde a year ago. So Mars, the masculine presence, is like, I got to catch up to a different way of doing things that's more feminine. I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite sure how to find myself in this feminine way, but I'm learning. And then in December of this year, Venus, the feminine principle, is going to go retrograde and is going to say, okay, now I've gotten too far ahead. The feminine has gotten too far. The masculine's trying to catch up to a different way of living now that honors more of the feminine, but the feminine goes, I've gotten too far, I need to go back. And then Mars and Venus meet in February after the feminine kind of slows down and figures its stuff out. And then that's when I think around February of next year, there will be some kind of new way of action more fully, which ironically next February is around the full moon in Pisces, when the new moon in Pisces with the full moon in Virgo. So I think that this is a really long way of basically saying here that we're going into a feminine time of life, personally and professionally, that's requires a lot of recalibration. Not for everyone to be feminine. That's only for the people who feel that truly in their soul, but to honor and respect it and to allow the feminine to kind of take more of an equal place, and to come more into a feminine way of life. I think women are going to need to honor more of their feminine and not be ashamed of it. And I think men are going to need to provide more space for it. And I think it's going to take more time until February or so. And then I think around February, that's when both are going to come together. I think around February of next year, and that full moon in Virgo, the masculine is going to say, oh, I know what's going on here. Oh, I know what's going on here. I know what's going on, how the femininity is changing. and how things are going, and I know now how to be masculine in a feminine world. You know, I know how to be not feminine if I'm not feminine, but I know how to find a new form of masculinity that's better, that's stronger, that's actually more masculine to fit in with the femininity. And I think that's going to then bring things together in a much more helpful way. So I think that's what I want to say there. I hope that wasn't too much, too much. I do feel, that's actually a really long conversation about a lot of things, but I think that's where I feel about this. We're all calibrating to be in a more feminine time of life, but it doesn't mean that everyone has to be feminine. If you're masculine, be masculine, but there is a need to honor the feminine if you're masculine, and to form a new version of masculinity that's stronger. And I think that's even more, you know, because I think that maybe that's another point to say. I think the whole message of this time really in our lives is not for one to be above the other. The whole time in the astrology is not for women to run the show now and for men to do nothing and to fall. I think the whole part of this time is for both sexes to be equally, and both energies to be equally strong in their own right, so that they can come together. You know, I was reading a book earlier this year because I am very interested in tantric sexuality. I read a lot of stuff on that. And one book that I was reading earlier this year was by David Deida called Intimate Communion. And he explained like the evolution of what he sees, you know, the energies and the sexual polarities evolving over time. And what he said is that in the past, and he didn't correlate it astrologically, of course, but obviously I do, because that's how I think about things. And he said that he felt that back in the day, a lot of the interplay between the feminine and the masculine was with one being below the other, one being of higher, better status, and the other one being below, which to me is Virgo. You know, the ancients did not think highly of Virgo. They thought it was about servitude. And so I think there was a lot of that David Deida was correlating it to. He said in the past, men were above women. He goes, now what's happening today, and that to me is Virgo. He goes, now what's happening today is that the masculine and the feminine are trying to be equal. They're trying to be equal. The feminine can do whatever the masculine wants to do. And the masculine, you know, is kind of pushing back to make way for the feminine to do whatever it wants. And that to me is Libra. It's about equal partnership, equal balance. And David Deida goes, I think there's another way that we're moving towards that hasn't really emerged yet in its fullness, where one is not above the other, the masculine and the feminine, where they're not 50-50. They're not, you know, they're not dulling to let the other shine, but where they're 100% completely in their own power. The masculine is fully masculine and the feminine is fully feminine, which is the way it's supposed to be, right? They were created to fit together, you know? So, and that to me is Scorpio, each in their own power, Scorpio, each in their own anointing. And I think that that's really what's trying to be born at this time. Is we're trying to birth a new way of the energies and the working together, where the feminine is in her feminine power, and where the masculine is in her masculine. But the masculine is in its masculine. But in order to do that, right, the feminine has to take off all of the expectation of living in a male-dominated world. And I think the masculine needs to realize that there's nothing wrong with being masculine, you know, and that that's needed, and that there is a really powerful way to still be masculine and to also be loved and accepted as well. So I think that's definitely what we're heading into, which is funny because all the planets are going to head that way. You know, after the sun is in Virgo, it's going to move to Libra, right? And then it's going to move to Scorpio, and then of course it's going to get to Sagittarius, which is about a new way of working, and then Venus is going to slow down for Mars to catch up, so that in February, you know, they can make a conjunction here. So I think there's a lot of interesting food for thought to consider there. Definitely a recalibration of that, and in a lot of different ways, you know, and that does apply to like our soul as well, you know. So to put it, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should bring it more personal. before I move on, because I don't want to get caught up. Like, I don't want to get caught up in all these political comments in the comments in the comment section. Like, I'm just not going to deal with that. So let me bring it back to a more personal way, because we all have masculine and feminine within us. So what could happen this month is that some of you could want to do things, or could feel what could happen this month is that there's a lot of crazy things, I think, that can go on this lunar month, the next 4 weeks, a lot of crazy things that can go on that we're just going to have to go with the flow with as we figure out a new way of life that's easier. And I think as individuals, we're going to have to learn here, when do I honor the feminine part, the flowy part of myself, and let that flow more? And when do I do the masculine to put structures in place? Not dim either one, not stop the feminine from being feminine, not stop the masculine from being masculine, but when do I get those in their right places at the right time? You know, when do I do the flowy thing when I need to do the flowy thing? And when do I do the structured thing when I need to do the structured thing? And going back and forth between the masculine and the feminine may not be a 50-50 balance. You know, maybe sometime we do this when the feminine is needed, and sometimes we do this when the masculine is needed. It's not 50-50. It's based on whatever is needed at whatever time it's needed, whatever part of the cycle that we're at, in order to move it forward. So I want to say that. Oh, now what I want to do is I want to look at the inside degree for this time period to give you more context of what's going on. Okay, the inside degrees are not written by me. They were written by another person named Elias Lonsdale, who channeled from spirit with the meanings of each of the degrees of the zodiac. I'm going to read the ones around this new moon. The new moon is at 14 degrees Virgo. However, I did think that 13 degrees had something very interesting here. What does 13 degrees Virgo say? It's up on the screen. It says peppery, fire, contentious, and spoiling for a fight. So what that means to me is that this new moon is not that pleasant, which I think I've already described. There is a lot of resistance here to doing things in a new and different way. Okay. Not only that, but it does indicate something here about being far extreme, taking sides, being partisan about all of that. So I think there's also some of this that's going on as well, is that not only is this new moon very contentious, but I think that there's a part of us that's very stuck in certain ways of thinking and certain ways of believing that just aren't relevant anymore, and that are too black and white, or that are based on an old paradigm. Too. I think that that's a big part of the issue as well, and that we're not open to other ways of thinking, which is what is required here at this time. Okay. It also says here to read down further, keenly good at self-deception. So I think that there also too is not only at this time a lot of like contention about how do we do things in an easier way, but I think that there's and we're too stuck on old ways and too stuck in old beliefs. But I think that we may not be seeing clearly about where the beliefs are stuck and about what's going on here as well. Okay. I also wanted to look at Virgo 14, which is the degree of the new moon itself, because I also think it's relevant. And it says, set in place, the die is cast, the past determines the future, held within patterns and syndromes of the habitual and the pragmatic, identified with severe frameworks. So what this means to me is, in addition to all this challenging stuff here, that this new moon is contentious and too partisan and stuck in old beliefs that we can't see the truth of. But I think that we're also stuck too in old habits that are too strict, too framework, too stuck in old conditionings, old programmings. And now it's a new time. It's a new time to reconceptualize how we do things in life, how we work professionally, and how the sexes, I think the genders, the sexual energies, which is not about bodies, how the sexual energies interact and interplay with each other. I think now it's time to start to figure that out. Okay, and then I want to just leave with the last one, which is actually positive. Virgo 15. I like to read the degree sometimes after the new moon to give us a sense of where we're going next after this, and it's actually very much better than the others. Virgo 15 says, aristocracy takes many forms. To me, aristocracy is like royalty and nobility and high thinking. Okay, whether by karmic predisposition or by bloodline or both, being granted the ultimate pedigree for serving effectively. It's all about mastery, service. Filled to overflow with streams of your background, you are yet definitely motivated to springboard into the future and to not lean back in it. You feel the impulse to renew gifts, treasures, and mysteries. Drawing from the well, something fresh and new. So what it indicates to me is that if we can let go of these like old frameworks and mindsets and habits that really don't apply anymore, that there's something new that can be born again in a fresh and different way that I think is going to be more necessary and more life-giving, if you will, as we move forward. So there's hope there. And again, I do think that's what's going on. We're trying to conceptualize the way of doing things, the balance between the yin and the yang and what that looks like to be something better. And I don't even feel like I figured it out, like all the things that I just said in this video, it's just food for thought, right? It's just to me still an outline of where things are going. I think there's even more to be said on that, and even more to be fleshed out, and even more to be determined as time moves on, because it hasn't been created yet. There's still this feeling, especially I think from Virgo 15, that like we're creating something soon that hasn't fully showed up yet. So I think that we are heading in finding a new way of working with the masculine and the feminine that really isn't balanced. It's what's needed at the right time, what's needed when it's needed. I think we're working into that. Not 50-50, do masculine 50%, do feminine 50%, but do what is needed, masculine when it's needed, feminine when it's needed, in its power, and it's 100% power. I think that's what we're leaning into, and I think that even though I agree with my thoughts, I think it's just the beginning of a larger thing that we're going to be creating and figuring out together as we move forward. Now, your card for this time period, sorry, I went a good bit over, is the Seven of Pentacles reversed. What is this about? Well, the Seven of Pentacles to me, I should note, is about work, because it is pentacles, which to me are about like the daily grind and the earth and getting things done. And the unicorn is holding like a shovel, like I gotta work and fix things and clean stuff up, but it's reversed. So it does indicate to me dissatisfaction. There is some kind of dissatisfaction at this time about what we're doing, what we're working towards, the way we're living our life here. That can be a bit challenging. To me, this card also indicates that we're feeling like something is not right. And I think that maybe the message I want to say here is that because whatever we're stepping into with this new way of doing things is so different, I think in something we haven't experienced in a while, it may be hard to see exactly what this new way is. And so maybe the answer is to let the discontent with the way things are be more of the driving force, like, how do I say this? The discontent, instead of trying to get like a clear vision of like, what does a more feminine life look like? Stop trying to do that, because I don't know if that's going to come in. The feminine doesn't like to be defined anyways. Okay. So stop trying to define what this new flowier way of life is. Instead, just think about what you don't want your way of life to be. And I think you focusing on what you don't want instead of what will eventually happen, even though it is good to get different ideas of things, but I think that's going to help. I think that's going to help you start to make little steps more in the right direction that it is that you need. Because it's okay to be discontent. It's okay to be discontent with what's going on. It's just not the best to stay stuck in that. Okay. So if thinking about the future isn't working for you because it's unclear, think about what you don't want, and then just don't do that. Stop doing that and do something else and let that guide you. The card at the bottom of the deck is the Six of Cups reversed, which is interesting because the Six of Cups to me is about the past and being stuck in old things and romanticizing old things that really weren't what they used to be anyways. So I do get the huge sense here of like looking back at the past and something not working, not being relevant, not being useful anymore, having served its purpose. And I think the message from both of these is you gotta use that discontent here to break free from old things and to create something else as you move forward. I think the other message here too of this card is to break through illusions is key, to break through the illusions of what's going on, which was a little bit with the inside degrees, because there could be some illusions of what's going on, Some of you could be like, but work is kind of fine, like sometimes with the Neptune influence, you can kind of play these games with yourself, but I am okay, right? Things are fine. Things are kind of fine. And I think I like it the way that things are now, I think I like that. You know, I'm feminine, but I do work in a masculine way, right? I mean, there could be some kind of, I don't know, there just could be some kind of haze here. And so I think that that's another thing. Not only is there a need to, this time period, maybe focus more on what you don't want than what you do, because what you do want may be still hazy and nebulous, but to also focus first on breaking through any illusions about work and what you think you would really like as well, because that may also help here too as you move forward. Okay. And I think that's all I'll say. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I hope this video wasn't too crazy. And I'll talk to you in the next one. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you later.